Hi, my name is Damon, and I've had a question eating away at me for a long time. Should Pokemon games be made for adults? Before I go throwing my opinion out there, let's look at what evidence we can find. There are plenty of pictures on the internet that show that adults are playing Pokemon games and buying Pokemon merchandise just as children are. You can see them wearing the shirts, entering the battle and card competitions, and let's not forget about the delightful cosplay. Although getting accurate data on sales and player demographics for the Pokemon games through the generations is very difficult, thankfully in the case of Pokemon Go, a survey reported by Niantic that over 60% of their players are adults. Of course, you can take that with a little grain of salt, how many children and teenagers are going to fill out a survey. Additionally, just because an adult plays Pokemon Go doesn't mean that they're going to be interested in the mainline series. What this does tell you is that there is indeed a massive appeal of the Pokemon franchise found in adults. Or let's look at this from another angle. If you were 6 at the time of Pokemon Platinum's release in 2008, then in 2020 you turned 18, well and truly old enough to be considered an adult. And if you were 6 when you got your hands on Pokemon Red or Blue, then in 2021 you are roughly 29. If you were a teenager when you got Red or Blue, then you are well into your 30s. The fanbase from back then are all grown up now and still relevant to how well the games sell. Let's continue this game of math a little more by looking at those sales. Keep in mind that there is plenty of crossover in units sold, as one person might buy all versions from one generation and do so over multiple generations, but my logic should still hold up. For the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, we have versions Red, Green, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Their combined units sold roughly 75.5 million. The Game Boy Advance had versions Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, selling 35 million units. The children who played all these are well into adulthood, so let's keep going. Looking at the dual-screen Nintendo DS, but not the 3DS system games, we have Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Black, White, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black 2, and White 2. Although some of these players are under 18 in 2021, most are either adults or close enough. These games combined sold roughly 62 million units. That is a lot of people, and there are so many reasons why a good number of them are still playing today. Be it nostalgia, lifelong fans, or even brand new adult players joining the fun because their children are playing them. Anyone growing up with Pokemon in their hands has a special place in their heart for them, and even one in their brains, as a scientific study published in 2019 pointed out. Despite all that evidence, let's say that hardly any adults are playing the games. When someone gets old enough, they leave the franchise behind. Sounds a little far-fetched to me, but let's roll with it. Then wouldn't it be a great idea for Pokemon to find a way to rekindle that interest? Bring back this giant group of people who bought those millions of copies of the earlier games. It certainly can't be said that they haven't tried to bring them back. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee versions sold over 12 million units combined. That is nothing to scoff at, but is this really the only way? Remakes and remasters? Isn't there a better way? What could they do to improve it? There are so many ways that I can't possibly address them all here. However, I am going through that very idea in a design study posing the question, what if Pokemon did a reboot? Where I look at as many aspects of game design involving the mainline generations as I can. But to answer the smaller question of what would engage adults better, in my opinion, I think that means creating a world that doesn't exist purely for the player behind the screen. By that I mean, characters won't talk to the player as if they were born yesterday. They engage with the protagonist as if they had lived there their whole life. Have stories that might be simple on the surface, but have deeper levels of moral complexity for those that wish to look. What about an ecosystem for the player to explore? Right now, Pokemon are thrown into spaces like a Lucky Dip. In Pokemon Sword and Shield, we finally had a wild area we could explore, but it was less a cohesive environment and more like a box of mixed chocolates. How about battle mechanics that rekindle the creative levels of strategy that the first few generations inspired? Or perhaps difficulty settings to help maintain a challenge throughout the gameplay? In order to engage older audiences, there has to be a deeper level of engagement somewhere. Again, I'll repeat these points in the design study, but what I would love to hear is what they could do to engage you more. Let me know in the comments below what you would be interested in seeing changed. So if this is what would engage adult fans, then the original question remains: should Pokemon be made for adults? I believe the answer to that question is no, not exclusively. Pokemon should be made to appeal to the whole family. Teenagers and adults are welcome to join the fun, not just children. Although, according to interviews, the lead developers sure seem to believe that they are doing just that. In reality, they don't seem to be quite managing it, especially since they keep lowering the difficulty because they believe children don't have patience anymore, which I think is false, but whatever. A good example of appealing to the whole family would be the classic Disney movies. Though created primarily for children and to sell merchandise, these films still appeal to teenagers and adults with their deeper levels of storytelling and character relatability. Video games such as Summer in Mara or Spiritfarer also have this appeal with its gorgeous aesthetic, fun mechanics, and a touching narrative. Other games such as Journey, A Short Hike, Rime, Ori and the Blind Forest, or even Shadow of the Colossus have a similar appeal. Stories that can have a deep impact without detracting from having a bit of fun. What will happen if they don't adapt to the times? Pokemon Sword and Shield sold very well on the Nintendo Switch, despite the outcry about the gameplay and graphical performance. The advertising for these games focused a lot on their wild area and how the game would innovate on the design formula for Pokemon. However, it ended up being rather disenchanting once it got into the hands of players. Of course, not everyone had these grievances, but there was enough to call attention to it. Until the DLC expansions, there was only one wild area, and the rest of the game was still the same narrow paths and grass patches. Players were expecting lots of different areas with some distance between them, not all the Pokemon packed into one tight container. The success of Sword and Shield may very well have been purely on the standing of Pokemon's reputation, instead of how good they themselves were. If that is the case, then the developers can only fool us so many times before it comes back to bite them. I suppose, in this regard, it plays in their favor that they target children as their audience. Every generation is far enough apart that they basically have a new batch of suckers to pull in every time. If this was their genuine intention, to make subpar content to save money, because children don't know any better, which I doubt, it would make for pretty unethical game development practice. What I actually believe is that their games aren't as good as they could be because they have to stick to release date schedules. They have to keep up with all the merchandise and anime episodes that are in production simultaneously, but that's a topic for another time. One day, in the not-too-distant future, I believe Pokemon is going to hit a crossroads. Either they start innovating their gameplay and battle mechanics and giving deeper stories with greater intrigue, thus continuing their franchise, or they don't, and they start losing a lot of money. Perhaps the upcoming Pokemon Legends Arceus game is that first step in innovation, or it could be yet another subpar attempt. Losing your audience can be a slow poison. From the outside, it might seem rather sudden, but in truth, it will simply be a case of the straw that breaks the Numel's back. If there's an exodus of their adult players, their original and biggest fans, it will absolutely hurt their bottom line, and those adults might not even buy it for their children anymore. As each new handheld device was released, so too were upgrades to Pokemon's look and feel. More colors, better graphics and animation, 3D models, new ways to interact with your Pokemon. Each brought a refreshing new dimension to Pokemon's otherwise unchanging formula. Now, for the first time, Pokemon has come to a console, granted one that maintains handheld features, but this basically means that Pokemon generations will likely only be on console-like devices from now on. If their audience was expecting an experience befitting of a console's hardware, such as what Pokemon Stadium delivered all those years ago, then discovering that the game has hardly changed from the handheld experience would be most disenchanting indeed. Coming to consoles means that whatever standard they set here is unlikely to be improved upon. Innovations brought on by more powerful hardware will likely flatline. Innovations now can only come in gameplay, Essentially, if the formula for the core mechanics is static, we can only look forward to whatever minor gimmicks they invent next to tack onto the experience. For the sake of long-term survival, they need to adjust their formula for how the games are designed if they don't want their products to become stale, like they may very well already have. Of course, you are more than welcome to disagree with me. There are plenty of people who like the franchise the way it is, clearly. The Pokemon Company will still make plenty of money through the anime, trading card game, and most of all, merchandising. You could probably throw everything I just said in the garbage since the merchandising is where the money truly is. The mainline games make for only a fraction of their profit. A good fraction, but it somewhat makes sense why they spend very little on their development. Out of the billions the franchise brings in, the games would be lucky to see 30 million of that towards production. We don't actually know what the budget for the games are, we can only rely on guesstimate from professionals. But whatever the case, the games are purely the method for new Pokemon to be introduced. They don't have to be good, they just have to sell plushies. But when a mainline Pokemon generation eventually does perform extremely poorly, it will be a red flag to their investors that the well is running dry. Odds are, a lot of them will cut and run. Like a ripple in a pond, it will hit all peripherals and become a declining franchise. The games are the roots that the whole Pokemon tree grows from. What would happen to the new toys on the shelves if so few people are interested in the games that introduced them? At what point will the company get desperate? At what point will they actually work to iterate on design? Or is that what we are seeing with this Legends game? Has this change come too late? There are a million ideas from their fans that can be found on the internet, and basically all of them go ignored. As their fans get older, they need to cast a wider net to accommodate them, and that means listening to how their tastes evolve over time. Taking that feedback on board means taking risks for sure, but it also shows a level of understanding for the people who buy their products. We have these ideas because we love Pokemon, and we want them to succeed. Will they ever make an effort to deliver on the experiences we have dreamed of, attempt to respect the players as people who can handle greater levels of depth? Will they ever dare to delight and amaze their audience with new surprises? On the other hand, do we have the right to make these demands of Pokemon? Should adults really be asking for better gameplay? Game Freak has made it abundantly clear that these games are really only meant for children. They are the start and end of their target demographic. They make the games easier and more linear to try to aim for children specifically. But if Game Freak only sold exclusively to this demographic, they would be losing out on those millions of adults that make this franchise the most successful one on the planet. It would indeed be impossible to reach that level of success if it wasn't for those who grew up and remained faithful patrons, even when their tastes and skills grew beyond what the games were designed to offer. We're supposed to leave the franchise behind and never look back, but if we did, the franchise would decline and could possibly collapse. In the end, only time will tell. But before then, we can have some fun thinking about it. Be sure to check out the rest of my videos as they come out. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell awesome. If you are interested in any of the sources I found for this topic, they are in the description below. Thanks for watching.